Okay, our next speaker specializes in Web 3.0 transformation in emerging markets and developing economies. Founding partner at Impact Rooms and blockchain healthcare expert for UN CEFACT, he serves on boards of Adanian Labs Africa and ACHA. Speaking about shared prosperity, tokenizing compassion in Bhutan's sacred economy, everyone, please welcome Dr. Alex Cahana.
Good evening, everyone. Good morning for me. I think it's about 2:15 a.m. and it's a pleasure to see you. I feel that the future is bright, and I want to thank the organizers, especially Eddie Perek and June Sutta, who have brought me to the footsteps and the opportunity to share with you some thoughts. I am a professor in pain medicine who realized quite soon that you can't seriously speak of mental health, physical health, without speaking about planet health and financial health. And I've been interested in emerging technologies and emerging markets with emerging business models. And so, in the, I want to say, spirit of the conference and the Wa that speaks of harmony, peace, and unity, and the Ma, which speaks of the negative space of what we don't see, I want to share the work that we've been doing in the Kingdom of Bhutan, where we are building high-tech, high-touch, in-touch communities where technology can actually walk hand in hand with ancestral wisdom, and where AI and blockchain can thrive and be used to enhance intercooperability, not just interoperability, and our sense of humanity. So when I talk about tokenization for a sacred economy, I just want to make sure that we are speaking about what is tokenization. And for the context of this conversation, I like to think of tokenization as the process of converting something, anything of value. We're used to thinking of land deeds, contracts, bonds, securities. It could be also medical records, policies, but also prayers and spiritual and art artifacts. And we are converting them into a digital format of blockchain, which is decentralized, which is resistant to cybersecurity attack, it's resistant to collusion, it's resistant to censorship. And so I want to argue here that everything that you touch today were tokens. You didn't think about it, but they're tokens. They could be fungible and exchangeable, like going to the event with a ticket. And can I give you my ticket and someone else's ticket? Or non-fungible that are just mine and can't be exchanged or can't be transferred and are unique. Question is, why do we need to tokenize everything? Why is it necessary? And the idea of tokenization is basically to capture not only the seen, but also the unseen values of things that we take for granted. We say that, I want to give you a little token of my appreciation. And so we can do that not only to just digitize assets that are visible, but also encourage people to do the right thing, to not only own the land, but to steward it and protect it and develop it, to perhaps also invest in your health or mentor or meditate. Tokenization actually allows us to start to flow with energy between us and recognize each other. And that has been recognized in the Kingdom of Bhutan, who has opted, instead of using GDP, which can be a whole conversation on its own, that global national happiness would better represent its values of cultural resilience and vital community, ecological resilience, good governance and sustainability, things that they see a value and not just stuff. Now, how does it do it? I would opt for the easiest way to think about it, the 5T model. And if you can't remember all five, at least the first three. And one is transparency. And the big resistance that right now central organizations have to blockchain technology is because it's transparent. It's very difficult to hide behind things when everything is on the books, is available. And we can talk about how do you preserve privacy, and there are privacy preserving technologies that are added to it. But in essence, the I want to say technology that we use is really to maintain transparency, which creates trust. So it's not just trust, oh, Dr. Cahana seems to me like a reasonable guy and I trust him and all that, but really create in this era of disinformation and this era of erosion of trust, this layer of the ability to start to work together. Because what we do find in the post-COVID era is that this erosion of trust has really hampered our ability to cooperate and solve anything at large scale. Now, this type of trust can be unitized. It can be, like I said, captured into units of value, praised, captured, valued, and it can be trade. It can be trailed in a time chain. It can go all the way to the genesis. You can see where everything started, the provenance of things. Where do they come from? Who is Dr. Cahana? Where is he coming from? Show me his credentials. I want to read his writings. I want everything on a public ledger so I can assess his authenticity, his trustworthiness, his trust praising. And of course, once you quantify things, you can also exchange them and you can trade. And a token, this is how a token looks like. It's not very complicated, it's just ledgers. And ledgers can be very, I want to say, valuable in red. I don't want anybody to know certain things, or they have high value. And there are different ways of assessing it. And things that sound completely new obviously have higher value than stating the obvious. What we like to call in science of information entropy. So things of low entropy that are structured and we understand are not really valuable, but actually things of high entropy is like, wow, I just heard this thing that I never heard before. Dr. Cahana was talking about the laws of infodynamics as if they're the laws of thermodynamics. I got to go and read about it. And that could be a high value. And so these are smart ledgers that can be in contracts. They can be also legally binding. We like to call them Ricardian. And this, again, token generates an identity. And obviously, digital identity is extremely important, not because it's one of the SDGs, 16.1, but also because with that, you can actually get access to different services and you can actually be identified by others through your reputation and interact with others in a transparent way and build up that reputation. And so we can argue almost, and I hope I will convince you by the end of this presentation, that there's no reason why we have to rely on piles of colored paper with pictures of kings, queens, colonizers, and slave owners, and not, for example, use financial, reputation with human capital as collateral. And so this brings me more to the question of what is a sacred economy? What is a sacred economy that is not built on transactions, but built on interactions? And so, for example, what we focus on is what you see here in the middle of this slide, the token, the digitization of the asset itself. So, I go to this village in Bhutan, all the land deeds are on paper with fingerprints that are undecipherable. There's a dispute of land, who owns what, how, for how many generations. And so we can digitize it and make it immutable and tamper-proof and archive it and trail it. It's all good. Don't misunderstand me. But that is not the magic. The magic in tokenizing, for example, this land NFT would be that it's related to a constitutional vote of what are the values of the kingdom when it comes to land. That, for example, 79% of land should be untouched. And then it lacks also that connectivity of what I will talk about, the M5 protocol, that actually connects us to the real world. The real world of money and assets that are not always think of them as something that is extremely conscious, because we know that capitalism is at best amoral and doesn't really interest itself in what is right and what is wrong. So a sacred economy that speaks about interactions actually has that constitutional vault, if you wish, a mother of contracts that says, for example, you will not touch the forest. And so whatever child NFT that comes in, whatever something that we want to do, it cannot go against the Constitution. It cannot go against the value, which is very hard to do because when people come in with a lot of money, then that exceptionalism creates exemptionalism. And you have to choose between two evils. Well, on one hand, I want to develop socioeconomic activity, but then, of course, there's a price, a planetary price to that extraction. So tokenization not only increases liquidity, but also creates new ways to collaborate. And the M5 protocol is just this way of how to reward these movements of value, this movement of energy, using things like Swift and ICANN and exchanges. And so what is M5? So I'm sure you're all familiar with the traditional monetary system that speaks from M1 being the cash and coins that everybody has, and most of us have M2's checks and saving deposits. And M3 and 4 is more kind of like institutional and broad money. And so in the equivalent of that, we can look at the decentralized version, the blockchain version, where M1 would be all these different tokens that we hear about, the utility tokens of networks that allow the network to flow and encourage people to use that network. And then there are commodity ones that are backed by assets, that are backed by things that we think of them as real world assets. And then, of course, M3 is more the stable coins or more things that are non-fungible, things that are like we concern ourselves like our identity. And M4 would be these tokenized stocks or real estate or whatever is business and larger institutional money. And M5 would be like on a governmental level. Now, what makes it sacred is if we take this M5 structure, we can say, and if there's one slide that I wish you remember from this whole presentation is going to be this slide, is that M3, that non-fungible part, is that's me. I am. I am the M3. Some call it in crypto language, they call it the soul-bound token because it's our soul. It's the immutable foundation of our identity and rights. So in my token, for example, it would say, so Dr. Alex is a physician, he's a technologist, he's an entrepreneur, he's a philosopher, he's a humanist. And each one of us would have something different. In their own wallet, they would have that essence, that nucleus of that immutable M3. That's not the constitutional thing. And then my everyday life is M1, M2s. I contribute my time and my skill. That would be like my money, my expression of my talent, my knowledge, my service. It's like I'm giving you something. So if you want to look at what is happening now in economic terms, is that June and Eddie came to me and they said, Alex, we want you to speak. So they gave me credit. And so I owe them something. I'm in debt. And so my commitment to them is that I will show in full, and I will impress you, and I will teach you, and I will be available for your questions and for future content. And from that, there can be only two outcomes. There can be, Alex was such a disappointment, credit score goes down, I'm not invited again. Or, wow, this is exactly what we expected, credit score goes up. And I become even more reputation, goes even higher. And again, increase in value. And so when I move from the M1, my contribution is that M2 is I sustain it and use different resources. If I work the land or if I preserve water or energy, to the M4 of what we're doing this together. So the M4 of this conference would be the co-creation of knowledge in a knowledge marketplace. So for myself, that I am the bank of me, it becomes the bank of we. And the M5 is like the aggregate of whatever bioregional, it doesn't have to be an ethno-state. It could be a bioregional collaboration. It could be a large community that mirrors the value of that marketplace. And so in Bhutan, they are advanced. They live simple lives, but they're not simple people. And they do have self-sovereign wallets. Their Bhutan National Digital Identity. They have a wallet with a self-sovereign identity account that they control. It doesn't belong to anybody else. That is decentralized. So there's not one choke point. There's not one failure point. And in it, it can be populated with different tokens of land and gold and water, and it could be health tokens and love tokens or karma tokens. This is what we're working on. How do we take those G&H values and put those type of tokens in and reward not just for money, but for the sake of connectedness. And how do we do that? We convert this commodity that we have through this creation of a bond, through a regulated wrapper that can go on a marketplace and accrue value. And it doesn't have to be extractive like the New York Stock Exchange. It could be something like a commitment pool where we commit to each other and, I give 1 hour of this, and for that, someone else gives me an equivalent hour of something else. But the point is that we own our commitments. It changes the concept of ownership from not something that I own that is only mine and not yours, and if you want access to it, you got to pay me, which is very exclusionary, exploitative, and extractive, and frankly, very sad way to live, to something that binds us together. And then we have it together. It can be on different exchanges, and we can invest and combine investments and combine forces. And our health, and the health of our community can be represented on some type of health exchange or faith. And you say, well, there's some things that shouldn't be tokenized. It's true. If you think of tokenization as only secularization, commodification, and monetization, then yeah, not everything has to be monetized. But if you think of tokenization, as I said in the beginning, the conversion of something valuable into something that we can trust, that is traceable and tradable, then that token can also be sacred and can keep that authenticity for generations. And so I'll just give three quick examples and end this short presentation. The first is, for example, land NFTs. So the way we look at land is like I own something. Remember, I told you I own it. It's mine, not yours. And I rent it, and I lease it, and I extract from it. And those who tokenize it argue, and it's not wrong to say that you can fractionalize it, and so that lowers barriers to entry into the market. And so I can't own a whole building in New York. I can't even own a whole apartment in New York. So maybe I'll just own a room, and I can be part of that market. Sure, that's true. But the land appreciation of it is not just based on historical prices and sales, but you can create a game, you can create an incentive to actually develop the land, to generate on it, not to extract from it. So in New York, for example, if I have a piece of land, I don't know, that's worth $1 million, and I have to pay $10,000 a year, I don't want to increase its value because it'll just increase the tax. I am disincentivized to develop it. But what if it was exactly the opposite? What if it was the George tax, a land value tax that says to me, Alex, as long as you do not develop that land, you will pay a high tax. And the more you develop, the less the tax burden will be. That's a nice game that I would like to participate. We can do that with tokens because tokens are programmable money. We can use demurrage, and we can say, okay, you said you're going to finish everything in 90 days. Start day 91, it's going to cost you. So you're incentivized to finish on time. You're incentivized to own your commitments. And of course, the most beautiful thing in all what we're trying to do here is that you can take real world interactions between people, with the land, with earth, with Gaia, with resources, and recognize it and add it to your reputation, increase your credit score, and give you, through these nature asset bonds, access to collateralize or to loan against your reputation or the ownership of those nature-based assets. Health NFTs. Not only can you own your data and become the doctor of yourself, this is something that we already start to think of, getting biohacking and my own nutrition, and I don't really want to listen to my doctor, and I want to go to my doctor only when I'm really healthy because I realize that my doctor doesn't really help me stay healthy. But it can also provide rewards for other things that are more close to you. that maybe are not part of standard of care. So you're not pigeoned into only what the system decides they want to make money in. And you can create decentralized clinical trials where you become the citizen scientist, and groups of patients can create these commitment pools and actually fund all kinds of medications or treatments or research that pharma is not interested in doing. And we can imagine a universal health income, that by being healthy, you get passive income by maintaining your health. Or even karma tokens, where your spiritual activity of offerings and prayers and the goods that you give to the monastery can come back to you as free offerings. And you can capture that as part of that GDP activity. So, for example, in one of the villages, before you enter the temple, there's the money wheel, fortune wheel. And there are two elder people that are there all the time. They're not counted as GDP. They're very valuable. If they're not there for one day, everybody in the village says, where are they? What happened to them? How do we appraise that work? And so if every time someone passes and just with their phone, they do a scan of a karma token, at the end of the day, they go to the base of the hill, they enter into the tavern and they pay for a bowl of rice with those tokens. And the owner not only feels that he did a good deed, but also he puts that on the ledger and feeds his fellow community. He invests in the commons. And then he goes to the farmer who gives him the rice and says, can I get that rice at 20% off? And he says, why? He says, because I'm a good person. Why are you a good person? Because here, look at my ledger. I gave 1,000 bowls, 1,000 tokens. And then the farmer goes to his suppliers and says, I'm a good farmer. And you suddenly create this movement of energy, of cash flow. It's not about the money, it's about the flow that captures the goodness of what we think for that marketplace, for that village, that being kind is praiseworthy. So how do you start? We started with a village. We just finished now 2 weeks of the United Nations General Assembly. We presented our work at a village called Vinchingang, which means the gratitude village. These are believed to be the original masons of the kingdom back from the 1600s. And that they are now being rehomed next door because their dwellings, who are 400 years old, need to be refreshed. And so they'll keep the old village as a connection to their heritage, as a living museum, while at the same time, right next door, on the rice paddies, they have another land where we are building also a decentralized physical infrastructure, where they can still keep their identity and still keep their ritual practices and still stay in that coexistence that they're used to, but also benefit from AI and from blockchain and from other technologies for good. And so we add everything on their assets on a ledger that is transparent. These can be converted into bonds. Those bonds create that wealth that is tangible, distributed into their wallets. And on that, each one decides what they want to do. They want to spend, they want to save, they want to yield, they want to reinvest, they want to regenerate, they want to focus on the commons. And so I want to finish by saying that sacred economy is simply shared prosperity. That tokenization is that path to capture our own value so that we can unlock the collected sacredness, the value of the collective, because countries are not poor, they're just cash poor. And I'll finish by saying that beyond the Wa and the harmony and the Ma of the what we don't see in the secret caves of the sacredness that is around us, all what you need to remember from this conversation, that I hope you heard with an open heart, is that we live in a world where we love things and we use people, and we just have to revert back to a world where we love people and just use things. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kanaha. That's so magnificent. I have so much, so again, so many notes, and that's especially the last thing that you said about, where we live in a world where we love things and use people. I hope truly that it does turn around, and we look forward to hearing more from you in the coming days and weeks as we progress with this conversation that we started today.